welcome to According to John Unbridled. Today we are going to be discussing end times and the puzzle that helps put it all together. I have some special guests with me today. I have Pastor Duke Herget, the Duke Meister, and I have Andrew Vallis, who you are going to meet very shortly. And so let's bring them on and discuss today's events and yesterday's events and the future events. Hey guys, how are you doing today?
Hey. Greetings from Florida.
Hey, good morning. Greetings from Texas now.
Yeah, and here I am in New York where there's still snow on the ground. I don't know that I want to keep talking to you guys. You rub it in. So, real quick, for our listeners and your pleasure, we were 20 minutes into this podcast, and I looked down and realized that we were not recording. And so we had to start all over, and now I have just given these guys more ammunition against me. So with that being said, Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. Born and raised in New York, grew up on Long Island, and moved upstate into the mountains. And I was an elder in a church up there for 17 years, and that's how I come to meet Pastor Duke and then yourself. Then moved down to Texas.
Yeah, how long have you been in Texas now?
Been here probably 6 months permanently, maybe a little bit more, almost a year. Had the place for 2 years, and we sold the place in New York and came down here.
Yeah, now you're retired. Tell us where you used to work and what you used to do.
I was a New York City police officer that became a detective and worked in the city, covering the entire city as a detective, and was also at 9/11 while the second building came down. I was underneath it, and we were in charge. My group was in charge of the cleanup, and we were there every day till 2 years later when the last piece was removed.
Wow, man, I imagine that was an incredible undertaking, not just physically but emotionally. That because, man, you're actually from Brooklyn, right?
Well, I'm from Long Island.
Long Island, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then ended up covering the whole city.
Yeah, I was thinking. I knew Long Island. I don't know why I said Brooklyn, except for you got that accent.
What accent?
Yeah. So, I imagine though it was incredibly emotional cleaning up.
Yeah, it was very, very spiritual. You sort of handed God over everything and what was happening, and that's a whole. We could do a whole podcast on just that.
We're going to.
Yeah. Where I was standing and what happened was pretty significant. I found out later.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're on the podcast and joining us today. And Pastor Duke, I know for this podcast, you don't need an introduction, but go ahead for any new listeners and introduce yourself.
Aging hippie preacher, came out of the drug culture in 1972. God called me to preach, went to Bible college, Springfield, Missouri, went to New York, 78, started a church, and was lead pastor 32 years, and then went on the road preaching mostly Bible prophecy. Moved to South Carolina last July, chasing grandchildren. We have 3 kids, 8 grandkids, 1 grandchild in heaven, and just good to we teamed together and maybe made the devil a little bit angry over the years. I hope to do it again today.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm hoping for too. Just to be that thorn in his side, and more than anything, guys. And this is obviously why we came together, and is to put this together and help you guys out there understand, or at least get a visual, and start seeing how these pieces to this puzzle fit together from the past, the present, the future, and where we're going and how this looks. And it will help bring some clarity to how they are moving. And when I say they, I'm talking about the elites, our government, just a multitude of, and obviously we know Satan is orchestrating all of this to bring into a one world government. And we're just going to put some pieces together historically and then of course prophetically. So what I want to first bring up is what started this was that cargo ship that ran into the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And when that happened, it spurred in me some things that I started putting together. And of course, all of this is my opinion. I mean, there's facts that I'm giving you, but the way it fits together, I'm just going to say is my opinion. And then that way, when I make certain statements, I can't be sued for it. That's that's a big thing for me right now because I don't have a lot of money. But my opinion is that the cargo ship was directed into the bridge. I think that the way I saw it, that it was no mistake. It hit it, it accelerated, it plowed into it, it brought it down. But there's some significant things that we're going to look at for why I think that, and it helps bring the puzzle together. So what started it for me, and of course I called you guys and asked you if you would join me on the podcast because I wanted to get this out. But when I looked at it and I saw all the lights go out on the ship, my first thought was they shut it down and took over it remotely. And of course, that the shutting down of the power and bringing it back up allows it to be on another platform, almost like a quick reset when you give someone permission to take over your computer if you have problems. And so when I saw that, that was my first thought. But then I started going back, and what triggered that was the fact that Obama put a movie out called Leave the World Behind. And it is where the government shuts down all computers, takes over everything electronically, full on control for them. They can control us. And it's really basically a cyber attack on our country. Then I started thinking back before that. So last year, they passed a regulation law or whatever it was that said, that stopped manufacturers from producing parts for cars. Anything 10 years old or older could not get parts, or if they did, they paid an exuberant amount of money for a part, like literally 4 times the cost, 5 times the cost of the part of what it would have been 5-6 years ago. And then I started putting it together and realized if last year they said 10 years old or older, that takes you back to 2013. Well, in 2013, 2014, they started making it a requirement to put black boxes in cars. When they put these black boxes in cars, what it allowed them to do is have access to the computers and to control the cars. So basically they can shut cars off with a push of a button, and it shuts all vehicles off because they're computer controlled. And if you have, like today, and I was saying to you, Andrew, if you were in New York visiting and your family wanted in your truck in Texas, you could get on your phone, open up the app, hit the button, and unlock the door for them.
You just call OnStar, and OnStar goes on, unlocks it. You can do all those things remotely.
Yeah, and so you have OnStar for GM, you got, or for American products, I think, and then for other products, you got different ones. But basically, yeah, it's like OnStar. Then I went back further, and I thought, okay, remember when Obama was in office and he did this whole car buyback, and people were just taking all their cars in, and then they were crushing the cars and getting rid of all the cars, and they were taking in all the cars that were older so that there's nothing computer on them, and then that way they can get rid of them. But then as I'm doing more investigating, I see NASA is collecting these cars that are 70s, 60s, 50s, and they collected cars, and I'm talking cars, station wagons, box trucks, pickup trucks, and even tractor trailers from the 60s they have, and they have hundreds of them sitting on their parking lot. And then it all started making sense, right? Andrew, you're shaking your head. You've seen this picture.
Also, if there's an EMP, those are the only vehicles that will be able to run.
Exactly. The only thing that can run is that which has points and plugs. That's right. Your basic engines, right? And here's the other thing that I came to realize was all farming equipment is computerized. So they can shut down farming equipment. You're not going to be able to farm. You're not going to be able to drive. You're not going to be able to transport. You're not going to be able to do anything. And that buyback all of a sudden made sense. At first, I thought it was just kind of to destroy the economy or to really skyrocket the prices of cars up. Because if you remember, guys, there was a shortage of used cars we couldn't get. So it forced people to buy new cars, which was what? Had all the computers and everything in it, leads to more control. And that's why when I saw the ship, I was like, in the movie, and I started thinking back in all of this stuff, guys, you can see where it's all planned and where it's all fitting together. What do you think, Duke?
Well, I'm not a big believer in coinkydink.
Yeah.
We know from the scriptures what to expect. We know there's going to be centralization of control of everything. When I saw the ship, it looked like it was aimed at the pier. It did not look like an accident to me. But I just don't trust the government. I've done a lot of research for a lot of years, and I know the control thing, and you were the one that enlightened me about the black boxes in the cars, getting rid of the cars that don't have the black boxes. And we see now the ability of the government to shut down bank accounts, to shut down pretty much anything they want. Lock down the world, if you please. We saw that in COVID. And so it's always about centralization of control. And I saw those lights go out, and it's either a plan or a coincidence. And I just don't believe much in coincidence. So the power went out, the power came back on, and that ship was ramrodded, into that plume of black smoke was all power given on those diesel engines, as I learned from you, and down came the bridge. Well, I think the name of the bridge, and I know Andrew's going to go into this in just a moment, I didn't really pay much attention to the name of the bridge or the location of the bridge, but I know it is a huge, massive problem now. They can't get in and out of the harbor for who knows how long. That's control. They can't get the shipping or the trucking across a bridge that's not there. It took them 5 years to build that bridge. Now they got to get it out of there, build a new one. That whole East Coast shipping thing is messed up. So supply lines are going to be messed up. Prices are going to go up, and we're just going to continue to see. I like to call them black swan events. That's a common term around it. Evil powers can do horrible things to just kind of weaken this nation, to just take control. So we're going to talk more about it, and it fits with the worldview that I've had. Catherine Hetheridge, is it the former Fox gal that was one of the liberal mainstream medias, just got fired because she said she's looking forward to these black swan events, that things are going to be happening in the news that are huge, that are really probably not going to be coinciding but planned. And in my view, that this is one of them. And I hope I'm wrong. I'll be thrilled if I'm wrong, but I would also expect more to come. So, Satan is alive and well. He's tightening his grip. It's the last days. It's an election year. America is not a big time player in the end time scenario from the scriptures. There's a reason for that. And I think what's happening now with this event fits with the weakening of the country. And I'm excited about what Andrew has to share now about the history there.
Yeah. Before I give it over to you, Andrew, there's a couple of things that I noticed. The first thing that they did on the next morning, and we're talking by 8 a.m. the next morning. So it happens at 1:30 in the morning. by 8 a.m. You're just talking a few hours later. The first thing they said was prices are going to skyrocket now on purchasing. You're going to be limited on what you can purchase, so we're not going to have access to things now. And then they said, we looked into this and it is not, and I like, why would you say this? First thing, we looked into this and it is not an attack on our country. I thought, no, it's our country attacking our country. Is this administration that has been destroying literally from the moment Sleepy Joe got in office. I call him the resident because he doesn't know if he's there or not. But from the moment he got in, he did what? Shut the pipelines down, stopped. I mean, everything that Trump had in place for us to be successful, he shut it off immediately. Guys, I mean, any rate, yeah, you can't say that this is all coincidence. And then here's the other thing. So, Andrew, you have some really cool historical facts on that bridge. Why don't you go ahead and share with us?
Yeah, we got a couple of things I'd like to bring up. One thing that you don't know about me, I was accepted into the Merchant Marine Academy, and I was going to run super tankers. And I had switched careers in the middle of that. I've been commercial fishing most of my life, and I'm offshore a lot. So I have a lot of knowledge about shipping and boating and container ships. And in my view, what happens when you have a ship coming out? You have the captain of the ship, and then when it's in harbor, you have a harbor pilot running the ship.
Now, real quick, Andrew, just for the people to understand, these harbor pilots are trained professionals to do one thing: get those ships out of the harbor safely out, so that we don't have what we just had. So a harbor pilot is exactly that. They professionally pilot the ship out. That's their job. They've been doing this and trained to do this for 50 years. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, and these scenarios are what they train for. Loss of power, because it takes a lot to stop a ship with that much tonnage and weight, to correct it, to turn it. So, in my view, as it's coming up, I could see that they were trying to correct it and they weren't able to. And when the lights went out, they lost power. They weren't able to drop anchor, which is one of the things they do in that situation. They'll drop an 80-ton anchor, and they can't do that remotely. So now you would have to get your crew together, get on deck, and manually drop it, which means you got to take sledgehammers and break the cement seal on the chain and drop it a manually way. It's just never going to happen that quick. So they lost that ability. You see the black smoke and the throttling to make the turn. It's almost as if they tried to correct it and then they lost control of it when the power went out, and now they're stuck in an overcorrection mode. And then when the power came back on the last minute, you could see the very last second with the power going and the black smoke that they try to go back out, but it overcorrects itself right into it. So I could almost see them struggling inside to correct it and stop it, and they didn't have a chance to do that.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is the news media said they did drop the anchor. But, so there's so much conflicting stuff there.
Yeah. I heard two different stories on that.
Yep. Yeah. And then the other thing was, from the one angle is when the power came on, literally the moment the power came, well, let me ask you this, since you are very familiar with boats and that's what you were looking to do. When they lost power, because they were on course correctly when they lost power. How is it that when it fired back up, it was immediately turning hard, and full acceleration right into that post. How is it that it happens? Because if you lose power, you will continue. And I know this from small boats. If you lose power, it will continue to float in the direction that it was going.
Apparently, it lost power 3 times. We saw it in the closed caption TV when it came on screen. We saw 2 of those.
Right.
It went on earlier. There was one other loss of power, and they were able to notify the bridge authority that it's a possibility they could hit the bridge. So they were overcorrecting in the steering from before we saw it on camera. And that was why they stopped traffic the last minute. They were able to stop most of the traffic. So that's just what I'm hearing from like harbor pilot chatter on a couple of different texts. So yeah, so whether it definitely was out of their control.
Right.
They were trying to correct it, and they didn't have the capability to do that.
Yeah.
So, either case, God is in control, and bad things happen. But that bridge is very significant, and it says, "Watch Luke 21:25. Watch those heavenly signs and the signs of the times." And here we go. We have this bridge that was named after Francis Key Scott, and that's very significant. He was an attorney, and you're going back to 1814 when you had Fort McHenry there, and the British had all their ships, and basically it's like a round 2 of the Revolutionary War for Great Britain to get a second poke at us. We were helping the French out in the French Indian Wars, and they sent the ships over. And so here we are in the battle again in the 1800s there. And Fort McHenry was significant at that point. And Francis Key Scott, like I said, was an attorney. He was on the British ship in the harbor looking at Fort McHenry there, and he was negotiating a prisoner swap because we had British soldiers and they had American soldiers, and we're trying to get them back. And that's what he was doing, negotiating that. The captain of the ship goes to him and says, we'll do that after you guys surrender. We just got the go ahead to fire on Fort McHenry, and 100 ships came into the harbor. And the cannon fire went on all night. And that's when Francis P. Scott wrote his poem, which later became the national anthem. The rocket's red glare, dawn's early light, the flag is still there. The symbol of surrender would have been the flag being lowered on the fort. So Francis P. kept jumping up and looking to see if the flag was still there in the rocket's red glare. As it burst and the flames went up, and they looked, he could still see if the flag was still there. And the relentless cannon fire took out the flagpole. And the patriots, the soldiers, were grabbing the pole and holding it up physically. And one by one, the soldiers were taken out, and their bodies dropped at the bottom of the pole, and another patriot would come up and grab the pole and hold the flag. So by the morning, there was piles of soldiers' bodies around us as they were holding the flag. It was still there. That's the true beginning of the nation. That's when it was unfettered. It was just, there is no more resistance that we could give. You guys are our nation. And that became the national anthem. And where he was in that ship watching that, was within 100 yards of where this container ship took that bridge out, which was erected in his honor at that location. So it's very significant. It was also on 9/11/1814 that this took place, which is another coincidence. Is that how it goes?
Yeah. The amazing thing to me is, I just got goosebumps when you were talking. Is they understood if that flag went down, that was the sign of surrender, and so they literally were sacrificing their lives to keep that flag flying.
Right.
Man, that just that just right there, man. Boy, if we only had the heart, the desire, and the mentality that those men had back then for our country today, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Yeah, that's what they call true nationalism, not what they try to distort it today as being a bad thing. That's patriotism. That's honor your country for God and country. That's what our nation stood for, and that's what it started from. And of course, they want to erase that history.
Well, you have to erase history so that people don't understand freedom. And if they don't understand freedom, then they won't fight for it. They just be senseless morons moving forward is what our government wants. They want us to be senseless morons that just salute and say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and they don't realize that freedom. There's a cost for freedom. Duke, why don't you share some of your thoughts on that?
Well, we know everything's moving towards centralization of power. We know that it's all going towards globalism. And so pretty much everything, you have to view everything as a coincidence or a plan. And you just take a look at a huge event that was hitting us 4 years ago, the pandemic. And in the moment, it looks like a pandemic. And then as more information comes in and you get the history of Dr. Fauci, what's really going on behind the scenes and the whole vaccine movement, you begin to see that this was all in the works long before. And now I call it a plandemic. And so when this event hits, I look and say, wow, is this an accident or is this part of that control thing? And my mind begins to go towards the ability technically for the powers that be. I believe our government is controlled by evil people, spiritual wickedness in high places, the Bible says, and they're being directed by Satan to set up for a new world order. They tell us that. It's not a conspiracy theory. That's what they're telling us. And so I'm looking at almost every big event is going to fit into that program. And this certainly does fit into that program. It's so weakened the nation. And I just think of the technical ability to shut down my car, the technical ability to turn down the power on that ship. And, there's two views of it. It was a coincidence or it was a plan. And I just don't believe much in coincidences. So I think we've been watching for, they call them Black Swan events. Catherine Hethridge, I think her name is. She was Fox News girl, and she was on the mainstream media there for a while, and they fired her. She said she expects to have big events between now and the election that really rock the country, setting up perhaps or there might not even be an election because this is the deep state's final effort. Donald Trump set them back by about 10 years his first time through. And if he gets back in office, the country is more aware of the evils that be in government and all the political things that are coming against those that are on the right. And all those people on the left have been uncovered and exposed, yet no heads roll. And if it comes down to bottom line, are they willing to do something significant? I mean, civil war, some kind of shutdown of the internet, who knows? But they have what I think we see now is they have the capability of doing almost anything. And I think what we saw in Baltimore 2 days ago is just an example of what they potentially can do. I thought of the event that happened in Maui. At first, oh, it's a wildfire. And then you look into what happened there. It's like that was no wildfire. Fire doesn't come in off the sea and melt down those cars along that seawall. And then we learn about the directed energy weapon, and all the houses with blue roofs were safe, and everything else burned up. And you're starting to say, holy cow, Satan is tightening his grip. This is incredible, which takes me back to Daniel's prophecy. In the time of the end, knowledge will increase. And I might add one word, exponentially. Men running to and fro upon the earth. Nobody could do that until modern jet planes, and then this advance of technology and the suspicious power outage on that boat, and then comes on and back off and on and off. It's like, I just don't believe in coincidences. I think the evil forces in high places did that to cause the nation to people to just kind of fear. We know they can shut down our accounts. I think people are just becoming, I call them sheeple. just kind of like fearful of the government and comply. We complied under, we thought we were doing the right thing by compliance with the virus, save grandma, stay home, save lives, bend the curve. And we just, in fear, we all went back in. I just think this is another wave of fear mongering. I think Maui was a wave. I think this is another wave. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's more waves to come.
Yeah, I agree that there are more waves to come. And I'll tell you what's interesting about Maui that maybe people don't know. If you go back and look, and you and I, Duke, have talked in the past about the Great Reset and what they're going to do, and they're not quiet about it. They're going to put, Klaus Schwab talked about it. They're going to do 15-minute cities. And man, what a perfect example, what a perfect place to have a trial run than on an island. And so you have Maui that gets taken out. The elites don't get taken out. The rich don't get taken out. And by the way, if you're paying attention to what's going on in Hollywood, you guys know who Cat Williams is?
I don't.
Oh, you guys are missing it. All right. So Cat Williams is exposing Hollywood, and he right now and I'm just telling you what's going on the internet. I'm not making this up. I'm just telling you what I see. So I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just pointing out, okay, just for clarity. But Cat Williams has come out and has video and says that, and has proof that Oprah is a handler for the elites. She's a handler for the black people, for the elites. Then she started that school over in do you guys remember where she started that school? Over in Africa somewhere. And it was a little girls' school. Then they found out that the little girls were getting taken advantage of, and a lot of things came forward from that. And then you have Oprah on the island, and of course her home did not get touched in the fire. And then after they had this fire in Maui, they put up this massive fence. Our military goes in. They put up a fence all around so that or blocking people from seeing what's going on that island. You're not allowed on there. No civilians are allowed on there. And what are they doing? I think that they are. I think they're starting a trial run on a 15-minute city in Maui.
Hiding evidence. If you go back to what the governor of Hawaii was saying prior to that event, you put it all together, they actually made that statement. He was planning to lead the charge for that. And so, in their own words, This isn't just your opinion, Johnny. They've said this, and you've done the homework and found out what they said. And so, put the blue roof on, you're safe. And they had safe houses, and they were able to wipe that out. And by technology, and the Bible predicted in the time of the end, technology will expand, and there's control of these weapons, things that happened in northern part of Texas, all these fires. Is that natural or is that controlled? Just event after event after event. And it all goes to the weakening of the nation, putting the populace of the nation a bit in fear of who is in charge. What are they willing to do? Are we next? And so the fear factor is increasing.
Yeah. Hold on, Andrew, real quick. So I was talking to Andrew about this yesterday, and because there's two things three things really that if they control the humanity. Number one, control the food. Number two, control the medicine, and you can swap those back and forth. And then of course, number three, control the money, and that's why we're getting to a one world currency or a banking system only, no cash. And they're controlling the food, destroying livestock. You name it with that. And that's what Andrew's going to share with us here in a moment. And then also in part of controlling the food is the fish. If you're a hunter, you're going to go out and they're destroying our deer and all that we're hunting. So we're seeing all of this destruction of things so that they have more power. Andrew, what do you think about that?
There's so much you could talk about. I'm like a big picture guy. I look at the big picture and back out and get out of emotion and just try and see what's happening globally. Or you look at going back to 9/11, 2001. You can see it's a shock. It's a wake up call for the nation. Return to God. It started to happen for a couple of days. The churches were filled. Uh, Everybody in shock and in unity, and then that dissolved really quick. God's hand is over everything. He knows what's going to happen, but He loves us and He gives us chance after chance. And so you fast forward to where we are today, and that hand of protection has been removed or is being removed, and giving us a chance to return. And there's all these signs we're going to talk about later in the heavens and what's going on. And are we responding? Totally confident because we have scripture. We know what the end is. The question is, what do we do in the meantime? And we're here with the same thing from the beginning. Nothing's changing. We have a great commission. We just got to step up our game. Will it change the outcome of America? I don't think so. But will it change the people we affect? And our job to do what we have to do, yeah, we need to do that. And there's so many examples of it. You could be confident God's in control, but you could also be confident that the enemy will never let a good disaster go to waste. They're going to jump on it, and they're going to, like you said, first thing in the morning, they're already talking about rerouting all the ships, go through the Panama Canal. You have what's going on. And, it's also another coincidence that this happened right after the U.S. just mentioned that they're going to protect the shipping in between Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, and they get into a pact with Great Britain and everybody that we're going to do that, and all of a sudden a cargo container ship takes out one of our bridges. So, is that a coincidence? Where did it come from? You don't know. But the big picture is we need to wake up. It's a wake up call. God's given us a chance over and over and over. How many do we get? And this is a striking at the heart of the nation, the beginning of it. Wake up again. Will we?
Yeah. So, well, that's the thing, right? We need to wake up, but I want to go back because this is all part of the puzzle that we have to keep putting together for our listeners. And so I want to back up just a little bit to what I was saying with what you and I were saying on the they're destroying the fish, right?
Natural resources. Yeah.
Yeah, they're destroying all of our natural resources. Why do you think that they're destroying the fish and the game hunting and why do you think they're destroying all of that?
Well, it's pretty evident they don't want any person or anyone or group of people to have means of self-sufficiency.
Exactly.
This goes way back. I mean, further than you can even think of. Why do people cut their lawns and pull the weeds out and make them nice and neat and trim them all over suburbia? I always used to think as a kid, well, why are we wasting grass? We could plant corn. We could have food. They got that mindset. You have to trim it, make it neat, fill your ground with chemicals so the weeds don't come up. Dandelions are probably the best thing you can have. So it's just, go to that mindset. You fast forward to today, you can't go fishing on the South Shore of Long Island and fill your boat, come back in 2 hours and have fresh fillets of fish because you can't keep a fish unless it's a certain size. There's a season that's been shortened so much that it's a waste of time to go out. The price of fuel is so crazy that it doesn't pay to go out and catch your own fish. You can't jump in the water and catch some clams, catch some fish, get a crab. It's all different season. Nothing coincides. So, you strike that off the list. You go hunting and they have all these diseases coming out and tick-borne things and flies, and you get blue tongue and all these deer are dying and mass all over the place from diseases they never had before. Commercial fishing, you have a 200-mile limit that was put into place where no foreign ships could come in within 200 miles to take out fish. That sounded great. The first thing they did was give permits to foreign ships to come in. So if they pay them, they can come in, and they take 2 million metric tons of herring out of the Bay of Fundy and up in Cape Cod, that whole area. And that's what all the tuna fish come into to gorge themselves on to get fat. And all the codfish, so that gets depleted. Everything else goes downhill. So it's like doing everything you possibly can to make it the worst for everybody. And like we were talking about, they want to know every animal you have. So if you have cows, you have hogs, you have anything, they sent out a survey to everybody. You have to fill it out. And they want to know how many livestock you have, how many gave birth, how many new animals you have, how many died, how many you got rid of. And then they ask the question, which blows it out of the water, what does your neighbor have? How many animals does he have? Is he leasing land? And they want to know everything. And if you don't fill out the survey, they'll send one right after another. And then you'll get phone call after phone call after phone call, because I got rid of all my animals when I was in New York. And they wanted to know what happened. Until I told them they're all gone, they stopped calling. But before that, they wanted to know, then they were asking my neighbors, oh, how come there's no animals over there? Last year you said there was animals there. Where are they now? So, talk about Big Brother.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, and they're just taking over everything and destroying everything. They're destroying our soil with chemtrails flying overhead and spraying us constantly with chemicals, so it destroys our soil, so we can't plant. And then, Duke, you were a beekeeper, but now we have sprayed so many chemicals on our crops and what they've sprayed and pesticides and everything else, that we basically don't have bees anymore. I mean, we do, but not what we used to.
Yeah, the big picture that Andrew made mention of, the it's been stated by the World Economic Forum. It's been stated by Bill Gates. They plan in the UN Agenda 2030. The big picture is the plan, in their own words, to take the world population from 8 billion now to down to 500 million, sustainable depletion. And Klaus Schwab in his book tells them how they plan to do that, by the reduction of food supply. And that is everywhere. The reduction of the ability to take the food that is and transport it and get it into the mouths of hungry people. So through controlled famine, their words, controlled famine, bringing about disasters that just little by little trickle down to reduce the population. And they've already caused the world population to begin to be reduced. Now, God said, how's that wordage go? Be spread out and fill the earth.
Be fruitful, multiply.
There we go.
Yeah.
I got my tang tangled up there. And so Satan's plan is the opposite of that. Take people out. And all of this, whether it's economic, it's food. I just did a podcast that'll come up soon about the diminishing food in America. Bill Gates, the center of the vaccine movement. Bill Gates, the center of the eugenics movement. Bill Gates buying up huge numbers of American farms and putting them out of commission, along now with BlackRock, along now with the Chinese Communist Party, buying our most productive farms, paying double, triple what they're worth, putting the family farmer out of business, reducing the food supply for the world. And I think Steppenwolf, the prophet band in the early 70s, said there's a monster on the loose and has our heads into a noose. And he stands there watching and laughing. And so everything that we're watching, all of these events fit together with that stated global plan. And then they don't put it on the news. They label us as conspiracy theorists and mock us. But the facts are the facts. It all fits with the agenda that they said they would do. And just points to the fact that Jesus is coming, because he told us to look for these things, and they're here. And I'm not in fear. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm ready for Jesus to come and take us out of here, take us to the Father's house.
Yeah, so there's two more things I want to talk about, and I realize that this podcast is going to be longer than a normal, according to John, Unbridled podcast, but I think this is vital, and since our calendar worked out well for us to get together, I want to continue on with this. There's two more things that I want to talk about. Well, more than that, but two specifically is the fact that America is being overrun with immigrants, and I want to discuss the eclipse. And so the first thing, since we've been in politics, running through the course of what they're doing politically, we're going to hang with that on the immigrants. Now, my thoughts on this, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, Andrew, and then to you, Duke, so you can both comment on it. But my thought on the immigrants coming in, because what I've noticed is it's not women and children. Now, women and children are being sent, but they're not making it. I think that they are either getting killed or raped or sold into sex slavery. That seems to be the talk right now, the big thing that this saying was happening with the women. But more than anything, what we're seeing is men 18 to 35 coming into our country. We know that a few weeks back, a month ago or so, that they flew in, our military planes flew in 340,000 illegal immigrants that are men, military age fighting men. We also know Venezuela, they have emptied their prisons out. They didn't know what to do with their prisons. The prison systems were overrun. So they emptied them out and brought them to America, and we gladly accepted them without vetting, as we have with all of them. We have Chinese coming over. We have every country coming over, and they're all military age fighting men. And our country, our government is flying them in, driving them in, busing them in, and then busing them, flying them strategically across the United States. I think that with that happening, and then with this movie coming out called Civil War that Obama put out, and he puts out the movie Civil War, I think that what's happened is our government is, I think that movie tells us that our government's going to rise up against us. And they're going to use these illegal immigrants. They're going to pay them. They're housing them, so on and so forth. I don't know if you know that they are in New York City alone. Our government, our state, New York State, pays $177,000 a day in hotel fees to house these men. They give them upwards of up to $10,000 credit cards to go and spend however they want to spend on whatever they want to spend. Plus, they provide them with 3 meals a day, in medical care, dental care, like all of this stuff. And I think personally that they are invading our country with illegals so that they, and when I say they, our government can use them as a military force against its citizens. And I think the movie Civil War is actually a movie telling us what's coming, and that's what's going to prevent the next election. Duke, what do you think?
Well, I hope you're wrong, but I think you're right. Evil men and seducers are going to wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. This is not an accident. This is a plan. And why it all fits. And so I think people underestimate the evilness. Is that a word? Evilness of Satan.
It is
and
now.
People in high places. The purpose for the Biden administration is not to build back better, but is just to eliminate America from being the superpower it's been, to neutralize it, to force it into the NATO alliance and the Western power of the Antichrist, for there to be a global government, America as we know it must go down. And I believe that these events that we're bringing up today are all part of that strategic plan. Bringing these men in for such an hour as this, it makes absolutely no sense unless there's something deviant behind it. And so I think you're right. And I listen to a lot of people, Joe Rogan, people who don't have a biblical worldview. I listen to Elon Musk, who doesn't have a biblical worldview. And these people are seeing this. They don't understand the prophetic implications, but they're seeing it and they're fearful of it. And they're sounding the warning. Now, the mainstream media looks at them, looks at us, and says, you're conspiracy theorists, you're crazy. But the facts are the facts, and there's a reason for it. And I think that is the reason.
Yeah. And one of the other things that really kind of helps solidify this too is, Andrew, you are in Texas. And so the border down there, Biden said, and they actually tried to pass a federal law against you guys, that if anyone got in the way or tried to prevent an illegal from crossing the border, that you were to be fined, what was it, $5,000 and imprisoned for a certain amount of time. Like they literally were trying to impose all these laws and regulations on you to stop Texas from stopping any illegals from coming in. Give us your thoughts on that.
There's so much going on. Just to touch on one thing, even if they don't activate them as military mercenaries or whatever you want to call it, just the fact that they're filling California, New York, and all these with all these immigrants, well, they can't vote, they can't affect it. But think about it. Everybody's a mass exodus, all the conservatives from New York, California, fleeing because the places are going down.
Yep.
So they're losing population. So
which controls the electoral.
You then have more seats in the House. Mm-hmm. And their vote in that state is going to go where they want it to, regardless of who votes.
Right.
So fill that and you gain more seats, you now have control over the House and the Senate. So that's part of this scenario, even if it's not a militaristic one, which very well may be. It also boosts their numbers. It's a high form of gerrymandering, put it that way. That going on, as well as just to touch one other thing, with the fires in in the Panhandle area, when Biden flew over, when he made his first appearance by the border and he flew over, he made the statement, "Oh, well, those big fires, yeah, everyone except for the ones with the right houses got burned." Mm-hmm. But why would you make that statement in the Panhandle? Now, that fire is the size of Long Island. And so, that statement makes you think that, it wasn't just a random act. So then you fast forward down to the border where they're trying to protect the sovereignty of the state. The federal government's job is to do that. When they fail it, the state has the responsibility to protect it for the citizens. That's going back and forth in the Supreme Court. Texas has been winning. Some appellate courts come up with other decisions with Obama appointee judges, and they try to reverse it. But when it goes to the Supreme Court, they've been siding so far with the state, where the state can now arrest and charge illegals coming into the state with state police and the local law enforcement and the federal thing. So that's going back and forth. It's in the court day to day. It's almost a 24-hour change as it goes on, but they're going to protect their border. And,
amen.
So this all happened around Eagle Pass, that area where they were putting the razor wire out, and the federal government said, "Hey, this is like an act of civil war." They were talking about taking the UN and coming in. They're going against it. But then the court decision came down, so it kind of quieted a little bit. But that's the first statement that the federal government made. Oh, this is going to be where the civil war starts, around Eagle Pass. That's a little significant for later on in our discussion.
Well, so was also interesting about, you say that Obama made statements going over the canal about your what's going on there. If you remember,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What did I say?
Obama.
Yeah, well, Obama's the earpiece. Sorry. So Biden, yeah, but they're one and the same. Anyway, Biden made a comment in an interview, or not in an interview, during one of his speeches, and he said, "For you, I don't know if this is a direct quote, but it's going to be pretty close. For you rednecks, or for those of you who think that you can take over the government, you will need an F-16." Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Why would a sitting president, threaten its citizens like that unless he knows something's about to go down?
They're so emboldened with what they're going to do. They don't really care about citizens.
Yeah, they really don't. So I think what we're seeing with Obama putting out movies. Oh, by the way, one of the movies, and I can't remember now, and you have to forgive me, I can't remember which one it was. Whether it was the I think it was Leave the World Behind. I think it was that movie specifically, but it could have been the Civil War one. But I'm thinking it was Leave the World Behind, where one of the producers went to Obama and said, hopefully we made this realistic enough, and from what we can think. And Obama said, well, you missed a few points, but you're close enough. And the producer said that when he said that, and the way he looked at him, it ran chills through his spine, because he understood that Obama knows something that he wasn't telling everyone.
Yeah, actual footage to come.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. So, all right. One other thing I want to hit now. There's actually two more. It just keeps adding up as we go, and if I have to divide this, we will. The eclipse. Now, one of the things about the eclipse that's coming, and Andrew, I'm going to go to you on this one because you have some understanding of it. The eclipse. This is the first time that we've ever had an eclipse where our government has called in and is setting up military around certain parts of the country because of the eclipse. I don't get that. Why do we need a military for the eclipse unless they're going to use that as another launch pad? Duke, you were saying that more things are coming, and I agree with you 10,000%. Because in the Black Swan, I think they said there are 9 things that are going to happen, and 5 now that the ship hit the bridge, that makes 5. So we got 4 more to go. I think that they're going to use the eclipse as a military reason to take over more freedoms or to destroy or whatever. Andrew, what do you think about the eclipse? Share some information, because you are our historian right now, dude. Go with it.
You're on thin ice. Basically, I looked up a lot of stuff and been following it, and I kind of dove into it last night when we found out we were going to be doing this. There's 2 significant, well, there's actually 3, but there's 4. There's 2 significant eclipses that we're going to be speaking about. One is 2017, which everybody spoke about. Significant about that eclipse is that the totality of the eclipse went through the United States. Normally, eclipses mostly over the water. They don't make landfall. This started and ended through the entirety of the United States. And the other significant thing, it went through 7 cities named Salem, which everybody points out. Salem is, in the Bible, it's basically peace. And so it went through 7 cities of peace, not of peace, but with representation of Salem meaning peace. That was 2017. It was also during Trump as president, where we had a period of peace, economic peace. North Korea slowed down their missiles, and China was backing off, and Russia negotiations seemed better, and Trump assigned Jerusalem as being the capital, peace accords. There's a lot of things going on. It was peaceful. And that eclipse existed, and it exited through the Carolinas where the Civil War started, which is a little significant. So that was the first one. The second one is going to be here in 2024, coming up April 8th. And the significance is it comes into the United States through Texas at Eagle Pass. Now, this is where the federal government is trying to say, oh, it's going to be a civil war. This is where it's going to start. So it's significant, it comes through Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass also has this significant facts about it, that during the Civil War, the actual Civil War, General Joseph Shelby was now captured, and they were looking for him, and he buried a Confederate flag underneath Eagle Pass somewhere, and he was never found. So it's pretty coincidental that this is where the eclipse comes in. The eclipse comes through. It's I think 110 miles wide, and it starts out in the Pacific Ocean, goes through Mexico, and goes from Texas all through New York. And I think it's 3 hours and 33 minutes, or 3 minutes and 33 seconds is the total blackout of it. It goes through 7 Ninevehs. It comes in through Eagle Pass, goes through Jonah, Texas, and goes through 7 Ninevehs.
Yeah, here's the crazy thing: the Jonah Pass and then Nineveh from there on out.
And it's so crazy. And then, if this isn't a wake-up call from God giving us chance after chance, you got 9/11. You got 9/11, 1814. The bridge goes down. That's significant with that, linking us to the nation and how it started with God being first. And you fast forward, you got to rely on God. What happened with Nineveh back in Jonah's time? There was an eclipse. The eclipse was called the Jonah eclipse. You look back at NASA, they say the eclipse went through at 763 BC on June 15th. And then you have Jonah, they call it the Jonah eclipse. What happened with Jonah? He was spit up by a whale onto the beach and then proclaims you got 40 days to repent or you're going to be wiped out as a nation. Why did they respond? Well, what would Jonah look like when he got spit up after being inside fish for 3 days?
Right.
The equivalent that we have to that is in, let me get the year right, 1891. James Barkley, who was a harpooner on a whaling ship, got swallowed by a whale and spent 3 days in the whale. Had air pockets where he lived, and he was spit up. He was bleach white, bright red eyes, but he was blinded, and his clothes were deteriorating. And that's documented, 1891. So picture Jonah being spit up, bleach white with red eyes, and proclaiming the end during an eclipse. But also, what people don't know is that all that whale slime on him, you think he would have stunk like a fish. Whale, the stuff from the whales smells like perfume. So he would have come out smelling great, looking crazy. It's unbelievable. God's great. They listened, they responded. It wasn't wiped out in the 40 days. They repented, but eventually they were. So fast forward to us, you have the eclipse coming through and going through the Ninevehs. You had the other one going through Salem, makes an X right in the middle. It's also Rapture.
Right.
Town of Rapture. It's also an area, if you break it down, it comes down to right in the middle. It's Little Egypt is where it ends up being the cross of the two of them coming through. Is that the Exodus? Who knows?
Yeah.
So we have a wake call, and we have 40 days, according to Jonah, you have 40 days to repent. What's in 40 days? After April 8th, you have Pentecost. So, it's so many things linking up together. It's almost perfect. And who is but perfect?
Right.
So we should respond. How do you respond? well, you should be confident. You should be excited. God's in control, regardless of who's doing what. And what should our response be? We still, like I said earlier, we still have the Great Commission. And it's not just go out and tell everybody, it's a co-mission.
Right.
You do in conjunction with Jesus what he wants done. So we're ambassadors to Christ here before we get taken out to go to a real home. So we need to step up our game. And that's the whole point. Wake up. Will America wake up? Looks pretty glim.
Yeah. So one thing about Americans is we are slow. I hate to say that, but we really are. You know, like you said, 9/11 hit for 6 months, roughly 6 months. We had people's attention, and they were turning to God. And then after that, we forgot. And then it wasn't long after that we were putting the ones that we accused of blowing up the towers. We were putting them in Congress. Yeah. How much slower can we get? So
into the White House.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, we put one in the White House. And by the way, I'm not saying anything that Obama hasn't already said. His Muslim faith, he's not Christian. He mocks the Bible, and he everything he did in office, he did to support Muslims, and he hates Israel. He's made that pretty clear. Which takes us to the last thing. And Duke, I'm going to give this one to you. We had in Monday. So this is Thursday, the 28th of March, 2024. Monday, the UN came together and they passed a vote, which was unanimous except for America. America said they would abstain, which they might as well have voted along with everyone else, that no one now will support or come to the aid of Israel.
Well, the Abrahamic covenant governs all of history. God said, I'll bless those who bless the Jew. I'll curse those who curse the Jew. We know Armageddon is coming, where all the nations of the world will be destroyed. I think it's a sign of the end. America has whimpered. Instead of standing with Israel, they're just saying, well, we're just going to pretend like it's not happening. We're not for them. We're not against them. That's neutral. Well, Jesus said, if you're not for me, you are against me. So I feel like America pulling back from Israel, not totally turning our back, but definitely pulling back, could be, and if when we do turn our back, it'll be the final nail in the American coffin, I think, as America as a great world power. We're in massive decline economically. We're in massive decline in the respect of the world. They have no fear. Obama or Biden, nobody fears him. The world is nervous about the American elections. It's just interesting in that we're in the time of the end. Some people believe there'll be a great revival, and if there is, we win. And if there's not, we win, because Jesus is coming back. It's interesting in reference to the heavenlies. There, in the first advent of Jesus, the wise men of the East were seeing signs in the skies. Jesus told us at the time of the end, there shall be signs in the skies, the sun, the moon, the stars. And he talked about, in that same verse, distress of nations with perplexity. And we are there. I think, I don't know all the details. I was very fascinated with what Andrew just shared. About 60% of that I did not know. And I'm thankful for that, Andrew. But I do know there'll be signs in the sky because Jesus said so. And my faith would be, this is one of those signs. You look up, it's a warning. Jesus is coming. You look economically, it's a sign. Jesus is coming. You look militarily in the alignment of the nations, it's a sign. Jesus is coming. You look at the world food supply, famine is coming. It's a sign that Jesus is coming soon. So all sad events are pointing to Jesus, and that's a wonderful event. Be you ready for such an hour as you think not. Son of Man cometh.
Yeah, amen. There's one other thing that you left out, Andrew, and you and I were talking about it earlier, and that is where the eclipse went through in 2017, and where the eclipse is going through now. It actually makes a symbol or a sign or a not. It makes is a Greek letter or a Hebrew letter.
It's well, the other thing we looked at 2023. There was an eclipse, and it came through. It wasn't to the totality of the state of the country, but it made just the 2017, 2024 makes the cross or the X. The other one swept across the country, and it makes like an A with a little loop through it, just
Yep.
like an A. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. It's like the signet ring of God. That's his symbol, and it makes that picture across the United States.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that. I saw that. I don't know, a couple of months ago, where they were laying it all out, and I looked at it and I went, "Oh my goodness, the beginning and the end."
a leaf tab, I think, is what they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So here's what we have. Um, uh, we have obviously the attacks on our country. We have the cyber attacks, which will lead to control. We have where they're controlling our food. And if you look, there's so many things out there. And by the way, they're poisoning our food, which controls us with medicine, and then they're controlling the medicine. So when we talk about going into the food supplies and the medicine that we're looking at, we have the V that was produced, and in order for the V to have been produced in the mass amount that it was and handed out, it literally would have had to been a bottle produced every second. With If they had 5 manufacturing plants, those 5 manufacturing plants would have to produce a bottle a second, and even at that rate, it would have taken them 10 years to come out with enough to give to the world, and that is what we did in chapter 18 of Revelation. I believe 18, 23, and 24 is a direct uh, verse that explains the C19 and the V. So if I look here, and it says this, the light of the lamp shall not shine. And by the way, if you read all of chapter 18, Revelation 18, it will blow your mind. I think it points directly at America. And it says this: the light of the lamp shall not shine in you anymore. The voice of the bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore. Your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. If we look at that sorcery, it literally means sorcery comes from pharmakia, and it literally would be your wicked medicine. And America deceived the entire world. I mean, the entire world was deceived by this. So when we look at it, verse 24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and of all who were slain on the earth, meaning that in her was found that she is going to be responsible for, and America has always been referenced as her and she.
I look it up in Strong. It says pharmakia. This is by extension a medication, by extension magic, literal or figurative sorcery and witchcraft.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it was literally deceived and changed everything within the humans that were to partake of it. And I just think, guys, America is going to have a heavy price to pay for the evil that they have been planning and putting in place for all these years. And because it's affected the world. America has affected, or I should say, infected the world. You know, we used to be the #1 country sending out missionaries all around the world. And now we don't even believe in God. How do we get to that point, Duke?
Well, there's a big picture going on, a wheel with many, many spokes. It affects finance, food, drugs, education, entertainment, media, social media. It's all coming together. Things aren't falling apart, they're all coming together. And those of us who are biblically literate are called to be watchmen on the wall, to know the scriptural scenario, what to expect, and everything we've discussed today fits into that prophetic last days biblical scenario. America gone down, heading into the new world order. As Biden said, we will lead the way into the new world order. My question is, will God maybe raise up a patriot movement, use a movement of among men to kind of pull that back a while? That's in the hand of God. It's not in the hand of Biden. It's not in the hand of Obama. It's not in the hand of NATO or Putin or Xi. It's in the hands of God. He told us what to watch for. It's here, and it's all pointing to the soon return of Jesus, our Savior. And so it's a win for us, but it's a loss for the world. And that massive death that we read about in the book of Revelation, chapter 6 through 19, seems to be, that World Economic Forum, the Bill Gates getting rid of, killing people, euthanasia, all that's here in the food and the drugs and the water and the chemtrails. Man, it's all a perfect storm. It's all coming together in the last days, and King Jesus wins, and we're his servants, and we've been faithful in this world. We'll rule and reign with him. And for me, the rule would be like a little acre property along a pond and in the kingdom, and you guys can come over and we'll grow vegetables together and eat good food. Andrew bring the fish, and John will repair the motorcycle, so we'll go for a long ride, Jonathan.
There you go. That is so funny. Andrew, go ahead and give us your final thoughts on all this.
We can have another podcast. It's just, it should give you it should be an assuring message. It should be something that gives you confidence that God is in control. He told us beforehand all these things would happen. They're happening. That should give you confidence. Everything that's going on should, like I said before, step up your game. You want your reward stored in heaven? This is the time. How many times do people say, "Oh, I wish I was around during biblical times. I wish I was around during David and Goliath. I wish I was around." Well, you're here.
We're here.
They would be here during these times. These are the greatest times. So step up your game.
Yeah.
Let's say you want a 401k. That's the best one to get.
Amen.
It's just God's in control. You see so many different things happening. It's just, it's like you said, it's not a coincidence. And God will protect you and bring you through. But we have hard times, and this is what's going on. So capitalize on it. They capitalize on all the bad. We could do the same thing,
Amen. Yeah. For us today, and by the way, thank you guys for your input and being a part of this and sharing. And I'm sure we're going to do more and help others out, hopefully. But for our listeners, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning us in. And understand, like Andrew just said, this isn't a time to be afraid, man. We are living in the most exciting times of the world, because when the prophets were writing, or the New Testament was being written, they couldn't see what they were being told. They just had to patiently wait. For us today, we read about it, and then we get to look and see that it's all being unfolded right before our eyes. And as it's getting unfolded, guys, understand that our biggest job is not to, especially if you're a Christian, is not to try to change America's course. That's not going to happen. But what we can do is we can win one soul at a time. We can share the gospel. We can give the hope. We can give the comfort and the peace that only Christ gives. And so I pray that as time goes on, that's the direction you decide to go. Get serious about your life, your walk with Jesus Christ. Share the gospel with a lost and dying world. Share this podcast with as many people as you can share it with, so they can help understand what's going on. Maybe help prepare a little bit for the hard times, and more than anything, prepare for eternity. And so, guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and being a part of this. Pastor Duke, thank you. Andrew, thank you. And to our family that tunes in all the time, God bless you guys. I pray that this has been a blessing. And until the next time, God bless.